Okay, so as you can imagine, these animals being raised in these conditions and being treated in such a way has ramifications that extend far beyond their immediate abuse. It's breeding negativity, it's breeding violence in our world, but also it has a ripple effect on our environment. Now, these two images on the screen represent two separate industries. The car key indicates the entire transportation sector, which includes boats, planes, trains, automobiles, trucks, buses, the entire transportation sector. The fork indicates the food industry. Which of these two industries is doing more to drive our climate crisis, is contributing more to global warming? Bingo, the food industry. The United Nations 2006 report has indicated via the Food and Agricultural Organization that the entire animal industry sector is contributing more to our climate crisis than all of transportation. In fact, the World Watch Institute's recent numbers analyzing the exact same data as the United Nations suggests that, in fact, not only is animal agriculture more than transportation, but over half of all of our climate greenhouse gas emissions are directly responsible from our animal agriculture industry. Now, as a quote, livestock is a major threat to our environment. Remedies are urgently needed, end quote, from the United Nations. Now, this is a picture of a feedlot. Cattle raised for food are given approximately 120 days of grazing time, and this is a picture of a rather large feedlot. Now you wonder, how exactly could animal agriculture be that destructive? Well, according, again, to the United Nations website, which their website is up here, www.fao.org, just to give you a quick breakdown in terms of greenhouse gases, now only 9% of the annual human-induced carbon dioxide is resulting from animal agriculture, but methane, which is a more heat-trapping gas, it's far more volatile than carbon dioxide. 37% of all of our methane is coming from animal agriculture, and of course nitrous oxide. That's another significant chunk of greenhouse gas, 65%. Deforestation, 2.4 billion tons of carbon dioxide released just because of deforestation. 70% of the former Amazon rainforest has been cleared for pasture land for grazing livestock. In terms of biodiversity, 15 out of 24 ecosystem services are in sharp decline. The New York Times back in 2008 had a great chart to break down the amount of greenhouse gases and the amount of vehicles used and the amount of driving time. Basically, they showed that if all Americans would eliminate animal products from 3 meals per week, it would have a greater impact than every single U.S. vehicle being a hybrid. You can do a Google search for the New York Times May 18th, 2008 issue, and it will show this chart. Again, 10 billion land animals are raised just in the United States every year for food. With that comes a lot of waste, up to 500 million tons of manure annually. Now, they store this manure in big manure pits or lagoons. A lot of this will leach into the groundwater. They use a lot of this manure as fertilizer for their crops. Well, when you have that much, you end up with an excess, which yields E. coli contamination on your spinach, on your tomatoes, you name it, you've seen it in the news. A third of all of our U.S. fuels in our country are used towards crop production, which releases, again, up to 90 million tons of carbon dioxide every year. An astonishing 70% of all the grain that we grow in this country is being funneled through livestock. Half of our water supply. I'm from Florida. We're no stranger to drought and water restrictions. Half of our water supply is going towards raising animals for food. That's up to 5,000 gallons of water per pound of beef, where you only need 117 gallons of water per pound of wheat. And of course, because we're having to continuously grow and raise new crops to funnel through these animals, it's more than the earth would ever do naturally. We have to influx with extra chemical fertilizers. When you do that, you have a lot of runoff. If you're familiar with the Gulf of Mexico, we have a dead zone at the mouth of the Mississippi River. This is very common and prevalent when you have an excess amount of extra chemical fertilizers getting caught in your waterways. You end up with dead zones and algal blooms. Another really quick slide of extra pollution notifications from the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, the National Institute for Health. They've had a lot of different reporting. Specifically, back in 1996, there were extra high nitrate levels on the perimeters of factory farms, yielding a lot of extra spontaneous abortion cases and blue baby syndrome. The NIH reported back in 1998 hydrogen sulfide emissions claimed upwards of 19 lives. And in the 3-year period, we saw over 13 million fish killed in just 10 states. And these are government-reported industry figures. The American Public Health Association in 2003 called for a moratorium on all new CAFOs as extra evidence has emerged as to the environmental and public health issues. The Pew Commission, their watchdog think tank group, they called for, they reported that CAFOs pose unacceptable risks to public health and to our environment. Now, if you were to attempt to enter a factory farm or a slaughterhouse, you wouldn't be allowed to. The Union of Concerned Scientists, however, reported through the Government Accountability Office in 2008 what exactly these animals are being fed. Mad cow disease, as you may recall, occurred a few years ago, so they're no longer allowed to feed cows to cows. But prevalent among all other factory farmed animals are being fed same species meats, diseased animals, animal protein products such as feathers, hair, skin, hooves, and blood, manure and other wastes, plastics, drugs, and chemicals. If you look at the amount of antibiotics, 13.5 million pounds of antibiotics are required to keep these animals in horrific conditions, stressful conditions, unhealthy conditions. Otherwise, they would die. They wouldn't reach slaughter size and age. The antibiotics we're pumping these animals full of are the exact same antibiotics our doctors give us. How many have heard of swine flu? That is a direct result of having these animals live in unhealthy, unnatural conditions. The only way they can do that and be crammed together that closely is with antibiotics. Well, there you have a rapidly reproducing bacteria that will be antibiotic resistant and can jump from, let's see, pigs to turkeys to humans to ferrets, and the most recent update I've heard, a cat. And, of course, unhealthy amounts of grain. Now, the organic myth, the humane myth, the cage-free, the free-range, these are all very clever industry labels. We don't have time to get into all of them, but you can go to humanemyth.org and learn more about what the lobbyists have, how they have altered the meanings of these words and these labels to appeal to the compassionate and ethical consumer.